Hello, everyone. This is X Walk Hill Bethel here, and I want to talk a little bit more about some experiences I had at Bethel. And I drove my field service car. I mean, basically, the car that I had was a car I got for service because I pioneered for some years before going to Bethel. And that was a car, nice gas mileage, and drove that for some time in service. And I drove quite often because I was working third shift. So I would meet with some brothers at about 1 o'clock. I tried doing service in the morning, like right after work. And oftentimes, what would happen is I would just be so sleepy that I really couldn't focus. So I would try to get back from work, maybe get a nap or something to that effect, and then go out at 1 o'clock and meet with a few other people that had a similar schedule. So since it was a smaller group, I ended up driving a little bit more. And when I got my letter of acceptance, I remember, uh, my mother's telling me before you go, you need to make sure you get everything checked on that car. And, I went ahead and had the basic things done. Got a diagnostic. They looked at the car, nothing major wrong. Get a little tune up, do a few things here and there, oil change, everything. Get prepared for the drive to Bethel because that was like a 9 hour drive from Ohio to Walk Hill, New York. So I get all that stuff done and I'm super excited. I'm not really thinking about that. I'm super excited to get to Bethel. And of course, I want to get there early. So I drive, from Ohio to Walk Hill, New York, and man, was that a drive. Now, 9 hours isn't too bad, but uh, it was a bit of a drive. Then I get to Bethel, and there's quite a bit to be done, paperwork, different things that need to be done. Your car has got to pass New York State inspection. So I had to get the car ready for New York State inspection. And there was a problem. I have a relative that lives in New Jersey, Trenton, New Jersey. That was probably about, let's say, about 4 hours from Walk Hill. And I was trying to witness to those relatives. Those relatives weren't witnesses. And I wanted them to come to visit Bethel, to see Bethel. I wanted them to be impressed. And I remember going out to visit them. And I drove out to go to Trenton, New Jersey from Walk Hill, Bethel. Uh, it was, man, it was pretty early. I wanted to get there in time to spend the whole day. So it was pretty early. And my alternator goes out. Now it's pitch dark. Pitch dark. This is Walk Hill. This is a rural area. Not a whole lot of street lights, not a whole lot of anything going on. So you got long stretches of road with nothing but trees and forest and grass on both sides. Well, my car, it stops because the alternator totally goes out. Now at the time I didn't know it was an alternator. So I'm driving. I'm thinking about getting all the way to New Jersey. I had been driving for a decent amount of time. It wasn't hours or anything like that, but it was enough time for me to get pretty far from Bethel. Didn't have a cell phone. Did not have a cell phone. Car just dies on me. So I'm struggling with the steering wheel. I get the car pulled over to the side of the road, and there wasn't a big area on the side of the road for me to get the car. So it was real close to where the cars were coming and going, and it was really, really dark. So I was super afraid someone was going to not see my car and swipe the side of it. And I'm sitting there, pitch dark. Of course, I say a prayer. And I'm thinking, do I just sit here and try to go to sleep and sleep the whole night here in pitch dark? I'm hearing coyote. I'm hearing I don't know what all around me. And I think, you know what? Maybe I can get out and ask to use someone's phone or something like that. So I get out of the car and I start walking down the road, and it is pitch dark. It is pitch dark. There I'm not running past very many houses. It is extremely rural. It's really country. And long story short, I walked almost all the way back to Walk Hill. There was a big church that I walked past, and this is one of those churches that has the cemetery attached to it and all these strange statues and everything else. And of course, back then I'm thinking that's the devil. Like that is, demons are all around this place, and it's pitch dark, and there's like gravestones everywhere, and there's statues all around the church, and I've got to walk pretty close to it because otherwise I'm walking in the street. There's no sidewalk, so I'm walking, and I remember a big semi truck coming, and I'm trying to move over, and there's like this little ditch along the side, and I remember falling in the ditch. I remember being so nervous walking past that, or really walking through this grave site that's attached to this church, that I'm singing kingdom melodies as I'm walking through. Singing kingdom melodies as I'm walking through. And I eventually get close enough to Walk Hill that I see the shuttle. There's shuttles that go from Walk Hill to Patterson. And flag down the shuttle, tell them what happened. They drive me back to Walk Hill, and I just collapse and go to sleep. And then the next day, I get a tow truck, I call a tow company to come and get my car, bring it back to Walk Hill. Now, here's the problem. You're thinking, what problem? You guys have got a full auto shop. No. Here's the problem. The auto shop, even though I was a Bethelite, the auto shop would not touch my car unless it first passed New York State inspection. Now, I don't know if there is a law in New York. I've got to look that up. If there's a law in New York that if a car comes from another state, no auto shop can touch it. No mechanic can touch it. I don't think that's the case. I think that's just a rule at Bethel that until it passes New York State inspection, they're not touching it. So I'm thinking, what am I going to do? So the car is just, the tow truck just brings the car through, and, I managed to get the car to the auto shop. I pushed the car to the auto shop, and I'm trying to figure out myself what it needs. And I'm thinking it's either a battery or alternator. I talked to the mechanics, and I'm thinking, these are brothers. I'm talking to the mechanics, and I'm saying, what can I, attach it? Can someone show me how to attach this thing to a diagnostic machine, or can you guys tell me exactly what's wrong with it? And then I can kind of go from there. And the brother kind of looks at me and it's like, well, do you know anyone that works here that's a mechanic? And I told him, no, I'm new. I just gotten to Bethel, and I was just trying to visit some relatives, and my car broke down. And he said, well, technically we're not supposed to do anything with a car that hasn't passed state inspection. So I have to call a relative, tell that relative what happened, and kind of go from there as far as what do I do. So I needed an alternator. I called Napa myself, find out if they have an alternator for that specific car type. And the, I had to walk basically to Napa. I didn't know anybody, I probably could have just asked around for a ride. I was upset. I walked to Napa and got the part and walked back to Walk Hill. And so I'm in the auto shop with the hood of my car raised, mechanics everywhere. I'm trying to figure out how to get the alternator out. And keep in mind, the only thing I've ever done with that particular vehicle was change the oil. So they did say I could use the tools, thankfully. They allowed me to use the tools. So I grabbed some tools and I get to messing around with stuff, figuring out how to get to the alternator, get all that stuff set up. And in doing all of this, somehow I take the battery, I pull the battery out, sat it on the side so that I can unscrew some more things because the alternator was down up in this car. So I take the battery out, sit it like on the edge of, the car under the hood. Then I start to unscrew some things. And I'm like, man, I've got to get another size ratchet. So I walk over to go and get a ratchet and I hear a loud boom. I turn around and figure out what in the world that was. And all I see is fluid just flowing all around the car because the battery somehow falls off the side of the car and hits the ground and just bursts. And I don't know if it's battery fluid or something. It is just, it's everywhere. So, of course, I'm standing there just like looking like just totally overwhelmed, looking around. And there's brothers all through this auto shop. Zero help with anything. No help whatsoever. And it's like, okay, there's rules and then there's sticking to the letter of the law to the point where it's just a little bit ridiculous. So they're all just standing there kind of looking at me. And then they go back to working on what they're working on. And it's so, okay, now I'm cleaning up this mess around the car. Now I got this alternator here. Now I don't have a battery. So, of course, I have to go and order a battery and go over, get that, come all the way back myself. And I got up early one day. Morning worship is at 7. So I get up really, really early, real early. I don't remember if it was 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. And I'm thinking, I'm getting this car done because I want to get to this meeting. I don't want to be worried about, not getting picked up or anything like that. I want to get to my meeting, which is that evening. So I'm getting this car done before the day starts, because after the day starts, the only time I'd have to work on it would be during lunchtime. Because after that, it's like, well, now it's time to get changed, get ready to go to the meeting. It's not time to start working on the car. So I get up super early in the morning to start working on this car. And I get the alternator in. I get the battery in and, turn the crank and everything's looking good. So I'm going back through it, making sure everything's okay, making sure everything's, tightened and bolted and everything, because I had no clue what I was doing. I'm just taking things apart and trying to put it back the way I remember. And I get the alternator in and things like that. And I look at my watch and oh my goodness, it's 7 o'clock, 7:05, something like that. So now I'm thinking, do I miss morning worship? What do I do now? I'm new. I'm just trying to work on this car. And so I'm thinking I either miss morning worship or I run and I'm a little bit late. Fortunately, the auto shop is right across from, the auto shop is not far from the building where morning worship is. So I'm thinking I'm just going to run over. So I drop my tools and everything. I'll take off right from there. I take off, run to the building where morning worship is. I don't want to go through a door where I have a long way to walk through a bunch of people so that everybody sees me going in. So I walk around the building to the doors that are right next to where my table assignment is. And I go in, quietly open the door, go in and sit down. And I try to, explain to my table head after I apologize for being late that, my car's broken down and, I've been up since 4 o'clock working on this car, trying to figure everything out by myself and get, the alternator and new battery and everything like that in. And I told him I think I've got it all figured out and I'm going to test drive it this afternoon during the lunch period. And he's just looking at me with this just stone cold look like, that's no reason to be late for morning worship. You know what I mean? Like, I got oil and grease and everything on my hands. So, of course, I'm getting looked at for that also. And I don't even eat anything. I sit and watch morning worship and, just get weird looks. People start heading to work after morning worship. And I remember just getting talked to. And my, table head wanted me to come and meet him in his office. And he wanted to talk to me. And I'm thinking, what was I supposed to do? Miss morning worship? Just not come to morning worship? It's not like it's something that had happened before or it happened much after. I was working on my car and lost track of the time. If they had helped me work on my car, it would have been done because I never would have dropped the battery to begin with. If they would have just helped, okay, if you guys can't do much, I can get the parts. I'll walk and go to Napa and get the parts and come back. And then if somebody can just maybe talk me through it, then that'd be one thing. You mean to tell me there's some law in New York where you can't talk someone through doing mechanical work on their car? That they have to make sure that they didn't do anything to help? So, here I am getting talked to because I was late to morning worship. And, he sat down next to me and had the dwelling manual. And he points to something in the dwelling manual and has me read it. And then I go back to my assignment. And, of course, I've got to now explain to my overseer that, well, I had to go talk to my table head. And now I'm back here. You know what I mean? It's just a domino effect. And it's very rigid. Very rigid. And to this day, it now I look at it and it's like, man, that was strict. Man, that was rigid. At the time, it's just how it was. Every day, it was just how it was. So if you, hopefully no one here goes to Bethel, but if you do, make sure you pass New York State inspection. Because if anything happens to that car, I don't care what it is, you will be doing it by yourself while the entire auto shop crew stares at you. And I'll have to get back with you guys with some more experiences And as always, hit me up 937-607-5085. My email is BETHELITE, the number 7 at yahoo.com. I'll try to get my Skype down there so that you guys can get at me that way. And this is X Walk Hill Bethelite signing out.